Recon, welcome back. Our next speaker is Will Longmate from Simply Heps.
Come on,
Will is an expert in all things hop related. And will be talking us through his journey of making hops.
Hi everyone. I don't really need the microphone. It's probably I'm louder than the mic and the speakers are, but there we go. Huh?
Put it down then.
Put it down.
No.
I don't need it. I'm not using it for video.
Right, okay everyone. So if you just clicked on the first slide. So I thought I'd do a bit of an introduction to those of you that aren't familiar with Simply Heps, because you probably all buy from, well, we only sell 5 kilos as the smallest size, and you guys aren't brewing at that volume, right? So you might have come across us. So if you've been upstairs already, you'll have met Jonathan from Getafruit and Reiki from Malt Miller, and we supply those guys with hops, and then they break them down into the smaller volumes that you guys use in home brewing. We don't always sell every variety that they do, but about 50% of Malt Millers and most of what Getafruit are, but you've probably used our hops in your beer. But we are the small end of the Bath House Group, so Bath House Group sell 50% of the hop products in the world. If you've drunk a beer, it's probably got our hops in it. We sell the smaller volumes in the UK, Ireland, Europe and Scandinavia. Lervig are a big customer of ours. At Northern Monk here, Oakham, Citra, like all of the Citra they use in that beer, they use about 20 tonnes a year of Citra, and they buy it all from us. Elusive, who you'll, Andy from Elusive, you'll meet tomorrow. And then obviously a local brewery, Wild Child, I don't know if anyone's drunk their beer.
Horrible people.
Great guys. We supply those. And then of course the other people. For me, I get to talk nonsense to people because I got a master's degree in brewing and distilling from Heriot Watt, just about passed. If you want a more technical answer to things, go and talk to Andy from Lupulin.
When did you graduate?
About 2-3 years ago.
You won't know Duncan then?
Not if I don't know his surname as well. It's a very good Scottish name, Duncan. You narrowed it down really well.
What's his surname?
Ask me at the end.
He's a horrible person.
Chris made a joke earlier about malt. I used to work as a maltster. I worked for Simpsons Malt for about 6-7 years, and then worked for a smaller maltster in Milton Keynes that you won't have heard of. Yeah, less talk about that the better. And then my favourite Northern Monk beer, because of the location, is Faith, because I checked it in 9 times on Untapped. So yeah, so that's a bit of a random start to this. So Simon told me to be quite, not 101 with this, but a bit higher up, because a lot of you enjoy hops in your beer and you know quite a lot, but I just wanted to cover some basic stuff, but hopefully this talk won't be too child's play for most of you. So here we have the Bath House product portfolio, and the lighting in here makes it a bit difficult to see, but we've got kind of a different set of split products, and you'll probably have just really touched the advanced products, so I'm going to go into a little bit of kind of advanced, you use classic products, I'm going to cover advanced products and a bit more creative, but classic is just like raw hops or vac pack pellets, etc., and then a little bit of extract, and then we also then process extract, and then create a lot of other family of products off the back of it, and then we also blend hops into blends of pellets, etc. So there's a lot of different products that we do. But essentially, what are hops? So you'll know it as Humulus lupulus L. There's also a couple of other Humulus lupulus, one Japonicus, which is just a plant. So if anyone says, oh, I've got some Humulus lupulus Japonicus in my garden, I'm going to brew with it, it won't taste of anything. It's just literally a weed that climbs up your house. So you've got a climbing vine. Essentially, it's the flowers that you're most important. Well, that's what you're worried about. The flowers of the hop is where anything matters. So if you've got leaf, vine, twig, anything else in the product, it doesn't matter. That's not going to give you anything for brewing. It's the flower that you want. And then inside the cone itself, the really important part is your lupulin gland. Leaf matters to an extent of the cone. That has some oil in it, but it's it's only really the lupulin and the leaf that you want to worry about. If you're using whole leaf, we'll get to that a little bit later on in the presentation, but essentially, people worry so much about other parts of whole hops and they kind of miss the point, but it's really those inner parts inside of the leaf that matter. If you go there. So we'll cover that now. So as you can see here, I don't know if any of you have ever split a hop in half, but I've got some here if you want to pass around. This is Centennial, quite a high alpha acid hop. If you just take some out, take some cones out and pass it around. If you split them in half, finger to thumb, just take a cone like that. See, I don't really do microphones. Just take them across with a thumb and finger. You'll see in the centre there's this kind of lovely yellow sticky stuff. That's lupulin, and that's where your alpha acid, your beta acid, all your oils are. That's kind of where the aroma of the hops is. There's a little bit in the leaf, but so in terms of inside the lupulin, you've got alpha acid and beta acid. Beta acid doesn't isomerize. It also doesn't really add any bitterness. So if you talk to professional brewers and they'll say, oh, I want a high beta alpha acid hop, or high beta acid hop, that's because you won't get any bitterness from it. It will just drop out in cold crash in a dry hop and you'll never see it again. Essential oils are made up from like a lot of other parts of the hop, and that's kind of where you get all your aroma, but they're a very, very complicated part of the hop. And if any of you have looked at the recent book from Scott Janish, you've got this like chapters and chapters of stuff that breaks this down. Like, I can't cover it now. There is a lot in aroma oil, and it's better to just kind of worry less about that. It's important about oil, but don't get hung up on it. Just try and learn what oils are and how they work and what flavors you get. Don't look too much into it. But that's kind of an easy breakdown of what that is. I'm sure you kind of all understand it to an extent. So in terms of selecting hops for brewing, all hops will go through the process where a professional will do what you're currently doing now, rub and sniff. We have at Bathhouse, most of the people have worked there for 20, 30 years, and they're really, really expert. But they will pick out like stuff that's wrong with it. And that's really, really important that they have that experience to do so. It's not an easy thing. I'm rubbish at doing this. Give me a piece of malt and I rub it through my fingers, I'd probably tell you what day it was germinated on or whatever. But that took me 7 or 8 years to learn. For hops, it's like 10, 20, 30 years of knowledge of rubbing it, smelling it, working the lupulin together to kind of pick up the aroma. Those guys are doing that, and that's how we select our hops for all our other products. There's someone doing that with a very specialist level. I'm not saying don't try it for yourselves, but don't worry so much if you're not sure what those aromas are and flavours when you sniff, because you're just never going to get it right, unless you've been doing it for 30 odd years. That's your job. Can we go to the next slide? Sorry. And then you can kind of see there, so what they'll check for is the visual, the aroma and the texture. There is a whole, like, another hour and a half slides I could have covered for this, of how much other stuff you look through for, about how if you store it next to a pig farm, it will smell like pigs. And if it smells like petrol, they've dried it wrong, and etc. But that's the kind of stuff they're looking for, but it can be very subtle, and it's not very obvious what you pick up until you brew with it, and that's kind of why we have these people that they'll pick that out. So into the kind of how leaf, and there you go, some more here. So you've got these two ways of doing it. If you're doing 4 or 5 samples every 10 minutes, you really just want to take one cone, split it, and then rub the glands between each other. And then that heat will release all the oils, and with the same as it would if you were in the kettle in the boil. That's how you want to sample hops. If you're going to try like 3 or 4 in a row, do it like that. If you do it like the bottom end, where you're doing like aroma evaluation as an overall thing, that's important when you're buying a bale, but if you're just buying like a smaller amount of it, 100 grams or whatever, do it the other way, because then you'll just release it from the gland. And you also won't get like this variation, and you won't pick, and if you try like 3 in a row, they won't like all smell the same because you've not blended all the oil together. You're very unlikely to pick up lupulin on your thumb and finger. It will stay within the hop cone, and that's kind of the best way to try it out. So in terms of other products, there's like hops and pellets. Whole hops, obviously, you get lower efficiency because essentially the leaf of the flower is there to protect the lupulin that you're trying to take out of it. So whatever you do in the kettle, leaf will never give you as good as it will with T90 pellet or any other type of pellet. So if you then move on towards kind of pellets, they smash the hell out of it in a hammer mill, and then that obviously releases the lupulin, and you'll get greater efficiency. You also, the other thing with dry hop, anyone that dries hop with leaf might have come across the fact that their beers become oxidized in the dry hop. It's because you've got oxygen within the leaf, obviously within the space. With a pellet, that's far less likely to happen because of the shape of the pellet. Even more so with BBC pellets. And if we go through to the next thing, in terms of how pellets are made, this is kind of specific to a particular plant in Germany, which is why it includes the drying and then kilning, etc. That doesn't always happen at every location. But you'll take your dry bales of hops and then they mill it, and then they blend all of it together before it's put into the pelletizer and then out. So if you've got like a generic idea for a hop variety, and you always think it always tastes the same and smells the same, it's because they've made pellets and they put it all in one homogeneous hop. If you pick like a farm and another farm and you let that farm be provenant with it, they will be miles off one another's products. But we take everything from all over either the US or we use like, we might even blend like Oregon and Idaho and Yakima and sort of any other kind of various parts of growing regions in together into one pellet product. You'll get like Citra is like Citra. Whereas if you pick it from another merchant, they might not do that, and you'll get like, oh, that's not Citra. But it is, but you've just like not hit the general level. BBC pellets are done the same way, but at minus 35 Celsius. So if any of you got a pack, I tried my best to distribute it along every aisle, you've got BBC pellets. And then if you just keep clicking until it kind of 3 images appear, yeah. So normal pellets, you might lose a bit of beer in your dry hop and it'll absorb a lot of work. That doesn't happen with these. So part of that is mostly to do with like the strig in the center of the hop, and that's obviously the woody compound that's like the tree part, like the leaf. With this, we sieve that fraction out and you get an enriched pellet where you've got more oil, the oil is enriched and the lupulin is enriched, but you don't have that wort absorbing part. And oh, you're going to take a picture? Sorry. So it's called BBC because it's developed by a Boston Beer Company in the 80s, 90s. It's not got anything to do with the British Broadcasting Corporation or anything rude you might find when you Google it. The Yanks didn't think that through when they named it. But essentially, what you're getting is it's enriched, so you'll get more and more aroma. Did you just do that, Simon? That's not funny.
You don't know. He knows. It's no questioning look.
But yeah, if you try them, I think there's a lot of Equinox floating about because we had a good amount of T90 pellets and BBC pellets from 17 crop. If you compare the two, you'll find that it's still very grapefruity, but there's a huge amount more aroma punch. And if you then apply that to what you would get in your beer, you'll find that it's just 1,000 times better. And that's why you kind of see more now New England IPA. If you look at ingredients that were on the label, and Cloudwater have now taken that away, partly because people were copying them for using ingredients like this, where it was more punchy because it had those enhanced pellets in it. And you're getting that much more juicier flavour in beer now because of these more advanced types of products. So that kind of covers everything for like everything you've probably used before. Onto some more creative products. These are blends of hops. So like we were saying before, we get people to expertly pick certain flavours in hops. These are blends of varieties. They will not tell us what they are, on the logic that we say, okay, they are genuinely that thing, and having drunk beer with them in, they will perform as they are meant to be. So With Fantasia, you get a lovely peaches and cream hit. Stone fruit is very, very difficult to pick year on year out of other varieties, but if you make a blend that will give you that stone fruit character, amazing. You can make great New England IPA with it. Equally, passion fruit over this side and monkey brains, etc. You know, you get these really amazing notes from the TNT blend. It's perfect for like West Coast plus, and some people have started to do it in New England, kind of hazier pales, and it does work well as a blend. You don't have to worry about what hops you want to pick. You go, oh, I want that kind of flavour. That product's ready and made for you by people that know how to pick hops, ready to make that combination as either a late hop or a dry hop. And then something a little bit more special at the bottom, Provoke. These are pellets that have French oak and American oak already in them. So if you want to get a wood flavour in a beer and you don't want to oxidise the beer, you want to make a pale ale that tastes like it's been in wood, Malt Miller have got some upstairs of a stout they put the American oak one with. It's amazing. Like, you get like bourbon cask character of like burnt notes of wood and then good vanillin and everything that you would kind of get from residency time in a barrel, but in 5 days with a dry hop, with no oxidation, and it's quite a clever product. So that's kind of the end of the traditional hop products kind of thing. I mean, a little bit quirky, but if you want to... This is bittering extract, so you don't just have to have lupulin left in a cone or a pellet. Just have a look and a sniff and pass it back. So this is 65% alpha. It's essentially an extract product that's produced by the same way that you kind of make decaffeinated coffee beans. They run liquid CO2 through the hop cones and it strips out all of the alpha, both beta and alpha acid, and that's why it's only 65%, because the other, was it 35%? Yeah, good, my maths is not shit. Is the beta acid compounds, and then they put some other stuff in it. Traditionally, this used to be like Marmite. Yeah, don't taste it, whatever you do. You'll not taste anything else for the rest of the day. I thought that was the given, but maybe not. Yeah, this stuff is, but essentially it's a bittering addition, the same as you would any other bittering addition. You just put it in the kettle, and you don't lose any wort, and it works really well. Like, that's kind of Malt Miller are looking into selling this for us. They're trying to work out how to pack it best. It's kind of the problem at the moment, because it's quite a viscous liquid and it's difficult for them to pack smaller. But yeah, that's kind of a. And then isomerised extract. So obviously, when you boil in the kettle, you isomerise the alpha acid. But what if you brew a beer and then the bitterness of your final beer is not right? I mean, this is more of a commercial brewing thing, but you can add this type of product as either as a fermentation addition or post-fermentation, depending on which one it is. So you can bring your bitterness back up to what you wanted it to be. They also make another version of it, either ready hop or tetra hop, where it can be dosed into beer in that stage to then be, this is very much a big beer thing, packaged in a clear glass bottle. Why you would want to do that with your beer, I don't know. But we have a product that will stop it from tasting and smelling like a skunk's opened themselves near you. Or you've been smoking weed, is the other one. But yeah, it's quite clever products if you want to go for those. But that's essentially what they are. PHA oils are... Oh, I'm in front of the speaker, am I? Yeah, almost. So we also have fractional oils that we take out. I did think I packed some samples, but it would appear that I left them in the office. Otherwise, I would have let you have them. But essentially, you can drop this as an aroma addition in the same way. So if your aroma on your beer doesn't meet the expectations that you thought it would post-brew, you add this in fermentation or pre-packaging, and then for the next 2 years, it will smell like the hop that you thought it was going to smell like.
But again, you never sell it direct to us because you're only selling 5 kilos, so it comes somewhere else.
No, we are looking at selling this in smaller volumes. Like these things do get sold in smaller volumes. It's just, yeah. If you find these things where, you know, you're going to enter a competition, you go, oh shit, that's not quite what we wanted it to be. you can hop it up. I mean, these were kind of designed for big lagers, so they don't come in anything like mega exciting. We do sell them in Citra, but other than that, it's mostly like traditional German varieties, or like other traditional American variety. I mean, Cascade's not really traditional, but it's sort of become traditional. But yeah, they don't really replace dry hopping or anything like that. You still have to like do, if you wanted to use them anyway, they don't really work in the same way that dry hop do. You couldn't just produce a bittering beer and then ferment it and then add the aroma at the end before you packed it. It would taste shit. But because some larger breweries tried to do that as a craft thing and it didn't work. But yeah, they're kind of a clever way of fixing something, but not just adding more bittering. And then another product. So from this aroma extract that they make off the back. So the previous product is essentially when you make this bittering product that you just tried, you get like leftover stuff, and they distill that leftover stuff and they take the extract, the oils out. Once they've taken the oils out, there's leftover lipid fractions. So for lipid fractions, we have something called Antifoam.
Don't drink it.
Don't drink it.
You can go to one form.
It is not New England IPA. And this stuff is essentially, we also have another one that's a bit more like Marmite, which is for kettle additions, but this one is dosed into fermenters, and because it's hops, it doesn't add any flavour or anything negative to yeast, it doesn't stop flocculation, doesn't stop anything to do with this natural process. But it means that if you then fill a ferment, I mean, it's not so big for, I don't know how much for home brewers it applies, but we have, commercial breweries have problems, massive problems with foaming in vessels, and they lose capacity in fermentation. I don't know if you guys have come across that, where you've gone to fill up a batch and it's been a 20-litre bucket and it's blown it off because there's a bit of foam in there or something. You put this in, there won't be that foam. This is just like running lipstick around a glass, essentially, but hops rather than some other. There's a distillery in Scotland that traditionally used imperial leather soap bars to stop fermentation vessels from foaming over, so it's not like the silliest thing to suggest, but anyway. But yeah, that's kind of how it is. But yeah, so any further reading kind of cover this. There's a book, Beer Styles, which is about, we sell this on our website, simplyheps.co.uk. I've convinced someone to let us have a discount code for BrewCon. So if you put BrewCon19 in, you'll get 10% off. This is a homebrew recipe book. Actually, I've got a couple that I can give away, so Chris.
You'll read it.
And the man with the best comments, there you go. This was published in association with the company, so have a flick through and kind of check it out. But there's homebrew recipes in there, but it covers a little bit of reasonable stuff. The middle book, if any of you have not read this, and I put it as intermediate because it's a bit like a lot of professional brewers haven't read it yet. It covers like everything I've just spoken about. It's probably I referenced this even in my uni work. I don't know if you did as well, Andrew.
I'm too old.
Oh, okay, it didn't exist. Yeah, it's like the best entry-level book. And then this, did you use this one? Briggs Stevens and Young? Yeah, it's unlikely that you'll be able to come across this one because this was my dad's and it was last published in 1982.
It's a Don Driscoll recommended text.
Yeah, but it's like one of the best books around. It probably retails now at about £300 or £400.
Hard to get.
But you have a problem, it's in there. You find some kind of way around it. It's a bit more chemistry based and I don't really understand it. But yeah, that's it. Any questions? Yes?
We've just started growing hops this year. When we come to harvesting, should we bother about putting them in the dehydrator, or can we actually just get away with vacuum packing and freezing?
You'd need to dehydrate it as best as you can first. I've only really done a little bit of hop material drying from the vine, but yeah, otherwise it would just go minging. We did find some hops in the freezer at work that were picked straight off the vine, and they're still all right, but they're not great. No. You can't try and dehydrate, or do green hop beer and then do it like that way. I mean, green hop beer is amazing. Like, you can get Fuggles tasting like American hop. I mean, I live in Kent, so I get to drink proper green hop beer, but like Bullion normally tastes like onion and plasters, and you have it as a green hop and it tastes like blackberries and strawberries and plasters, and it's kind of, you know, you could always go for that route. It's that's why we stopped selling it, because people thought it was cool and it's not. But yeah. Anyone else?
Out of all the new stuff coming out, what are you most excited about?
Flex. I mean, I wanted to bring you that rather than try and deal with CO2, normal traditional CO2 extract. I mean, that stuff's just like a bottle of bleach, essentially, of extract. It's, you know, yeah. So Pliny the Elder is famous for using CO2 extract. There's a brewery we work with in Italy whose best use for it is to stab it 100 times with a screwdriver and throw it in the kettle, because that's easier than trying to warm it up to pour it out the can to dose it to the right level in the brew. Flex, you can just pour that into a measuring cylinder, get the right level and weigh it out and add it. I mean, that's probably taken them 40 years to get to the point that they are now able to make it in that way. It's quite a clever innovation. Moving forwards, they're going to make a kettle edition, which is the aroma point. You might have heard of it if you went to, well, you've looked at the craft beer convention thing that they did in the US earlier in the year called Incognito. And it's essentially the same kind of product with all the other aroma points you'd add in the kettle. So you can just pour it in, get your kettle edition of Mosaic or Citra and run it straight into your FV and then dry hop. And, they're quite cool things. Anyone here?
If T90 is better than leaf,
Yeah.
why does anyone bother brewing leaf?
Because they want to be cool and traditional. I mean, so the main process difference is that you get a filtration bed in your kettle, and if you're not using a whirlpool, then you'll have to use leaf for that, and to capture all the protein that you'll have. If you've got the opportunity to not have to do that, get rid of leaf. It's not. If you want to brew modern beer, it's like that catch. It's weird. So, like, when I worked in a maltings, we were making 700 tonne a day of malt every day of the year at Simpsons, and like, it was all processed in a modern way, and then it would get shipped to California, to Sierra Nevada, and they traditionally used leaf after having that whole process of using malt that had been made in like the most modern system in the country. And you're like, why are you doing that? It's not really that traditional. You've also got freeze-dried yeast that you'll use. Like, it's not particularly artisanal. But if you were then wanting to use it in a boil and you want to not have the protein run through, then fair enough. That I won't argue with that. But if you start telling me that it's like it has to be traditional, but then if you were using floor malt and then you're using Kvik yeast that's harvested off some Norwegian's beard and whatever, and you put that in, fine, use leaf. But yeah, that's
Hero. Right there.
On the other end of the scale, you admittedly may not be the absolute wood. I've started roaching vines this year. I know some plants benefit from being having roaches.
Some.
Others that plant nothing is also hops. Would they benefit from grapevine or that kind of stuff?
I don't really know about growing, but I read a very interesting book recently that explained why all of the. There's a tiny little thing on Amazon. It's called Hops and Hop Picking. I can't remember. Must be only like 200 pages, and it's mostly history, but it did explain a lot about how wirework was developed and why wirework was picked. And I'm sure there was something in there about that. But if they're not, you'll read it and you'll learn something. But maybe it's in something like that. If you look through like traditional, but there's a lot of books that are written in the past about how hops grow and whatever that have stopped being relevant in the UK because we don't really grow any more of it. For good reason, because UK hops are not that good. But the efficiency is terrible on them. But anyway, that's another point. But yeah, you'll probably find something somewhere old that's useful. Anyway, I've got to stop now. Have I entertained you?